Welcome back to another session of Cherished Daughters Revolution video series, where moms come to invest today in their daughters tomorrow. Today, our special guest is Kimberly Wilson. Kimberly serves as a program coordinator for opioid and prescription drug misuse and abuse prevention in DeKalb County, Georgia. She joined GUIDE in September of 2017. As a part of the prevention team, Kimberly focuses on building capacity, increasing community awareness of the issue, and developing new partners and collaborations to create a positive impact within the community. Prior to working for GUIDE, Kimberly worked as a counselor and case manager in DeKalb County. She's originally from the Sunshine State, and she received her Bachelor of Science in Business Administration at the University of Central Florida. She is driven by purpose and passion, and she achieved a Master's of Arts in Community Counseling at Clark Atlanta University. When asked, "What is your purpose?" Kimberly responds, "To see young men and women break free from their past inequities and bondages." Kimberly is very passionate about building relationships to cultivate safe and healthy communities, and she is an active member of the American Counseling Association. Kimberly, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Kimberly, we asked you here today because we as parents are overwhelmed with the challenges our kids are facing. So new to myself, and I think it may be new to parents because in our generation, prescription drugs and opioid use was not something that was that big of a challenge for me. I didn't know anyone who was doing that in my teenage years. So can you tell me if this is becoming a bigger problem today?
Well, I wouldn't say it's becoming a bigger problem. I would say that it already is a big problem, especially in the Alpharetta, Johns Creek, and Roswell area. That's sort of where it started here in Georgia. They call it the Triangle. And a lot of people, particularly young men and women, were experiencing opioid overdose abuse. And so we've seen more and more deaths as time has come. And thankfully, there was funding provided to organizations like GUIDE, Gwinnett United in Drug Education, to prevent this from reoccurring, but it already is a huge issue.
So in that area that you just mentioned, that's kind of a more affluent area.
Mm-hmm.
So is it happening more in affluent areas?
Yes, I would say that it's happening more in affluent areas, and it's been a cycle. So a lot of times, the youth are exposed to different drugs at parties and things of that nature, but it doesn't always start like that. Some people are prescribed prescription drug medication through a doctor, and it starts off innocent and just how it's supposed to go. But when that prescription runs out or that person is no longer able to receive that prescription, they seek other methods to cope with the pain. And so that can lead to misuse and abuse.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Kimberly, can you define for us what opioids are, just in layman's terms, so that we, not in the field,
Right.
have to understand it as parents?
Yeah, absolutely. So opioids are medication that relieves, but there also is illicit or illegal opioids such as heroin. I keep it simple. I would say a painkiller or a medication or substance that relieves pain. Absolutely, because I didn't know what opioids were. It's not necessarily a familiar term unless you're in the medical field or a pharmaceutical field. But a lot of people actually have opioids. They just are not aware of it. And they're used to hearing the actual prescriptions such as Oxycontin and Dilaudid and Vicodin. Those are all opioids as well as, again, heroin.
Okay, this is interesting. So are there myths with teens believing that drugs or these prescription drugs are okay to take since they're, technically from the doctor?
Yes, I think the problem is the lack of education and the lack of knowledge of the risk the symptoms and things of that nature, because I don't want to portray that opioids are a bad thing, right? Because medication was invented to be a solution to a problem. But as we know, medication always has side effects. And one of the, or risk, I should say, and one of the risk is opioid abuse or misuse. And so a lot of teens are unaware of those risks. We're not going to the doctor and asking the right questions. And one thing that comes to my mind is the generational background. Some people are more prone to becoming addicted to substances of that nature because of addiction or things of that nature that runs in their family that we're unaware of, or families refuse to talk about such. So, very unfortunate.
That is interesting. I can see how it could be used for good or for evil. So it's just about it's just that what you said was abuse. So can you tell us what some of the side effects are of abuse of opioids?
Well, when I think about teenagers, because I want to focus on youth, a lot of times you can notice their attention span, how they're able to focus or concentrate in school. It could be a depressant. Some are depressants and some are stimulants. So it just all depends on the medication. But also you can notice things like the youth are hiding certain information. They're starting to act a little different than what your normal, their normal behavior. So it's a wide array of different thing. I think the most important thing to do is keep that open line of communication with your child. And one thing that I really am proud of my mom for doing is she always made me feel comfortable talking to her. And she rarely reacted. I don't want to say she never reacted, but she rarely reacted. And as a child, what that helped with is now I can come to her about anything, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, or grotesque, or things that most kids are ashamed of. And I can talk to my mom without experience that reaction. And so that made me comfortable for things like if I wanted to talk to her about drugs, hypothetically speaking, that I could open that conversation up without my mom or, reacting in a way that shies me away from speaking about that. So I think that's the main solution. But a lot of teens are exposed to so much information on the internet and they're exposed to these drugs. It makes it very difficult for parents to talk to their teens before their teens are exposed to the information. And so the side effects, I would definitely just stay aware of, do the research and stay aware of the different things that your child can experience, because it literally is that the child can experience. Absolutely. Even grades, dropping grades, or grades decreasing, I should say. So things of that nature.
So what is the percentage of teens that are using or that get involved with, the misuse of prescription drugs? Obviously, if they have surgery, they need some pain medicine, but do y'all have a percentage of how many teenagers
Or use like recreational use? Like, what's that like?
So 2/3 of teens who misuse prescription drugs report that they receive these from their friends or family home medicine cabinets, prescription drugs that are already in the home. So according to COVID, we haven't been around our family as much or as many family members, but typically around Thanksgiving or Christmas, those times are the most prevalent for prescription drug abuse or teenagers being able to retrieve the medication. Because a lot of times people aren't putting their medication in lock boxes. They're in a medicine cabinet, they're in the drawer, or they're underneath the sink. And teens who are exposed to prescription drugs or are already have a use of, possession, they seek these medications right in the home. So a lot of times it comes from mom or dad, or definitely grandparents, because most of the time, as the age increases, people are older, they're receiving more medication, and they're
Mhm.
keeping this unlocked and unsafe.
Now, let me ask you, Kimberly,
Mhm.
what is there a noticeable progression from prescription drug, healthy, I need this drug,
Mhm.
to trying to get this drug for an unhealthy habit, to then progressing to
Mhm.
that heroin? Or do people go from just straight to heroin? Like, what's that progression like? Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it perfectly. So it starts out going to the doctor. It could be I broke my femur, or um, any type of medication where pain will need to be relieved. It could be a mom who just experienced a C-section. Usually you're prescribed opioids. Well, if you are already exposed to, I wouldn't say exposed, but you have that disposition or addictive background in your family, um, you take these prescription drugs, you can become addicted to it. Okay, because it doesn't take that long of a time. Some people it's 3 or 4 days. Some people it's 7 days. Some may be able to take a 30-day supply and not experience that same type of addiction. But you don't know. I guess that's the biggest thing. You don't know. And so that's why awareness and education is so important. Once they have that prescription drug, let's say they want more medication because the pain hasn't went away, they're still in recovery of whatever incident or injury that they've experienced, the doctor can only prescribe so many prescriptions, as we know, for any type of medication. Eventually, you will run out, especially if it's an acute injury, meaning that something that you should heal over within 30 days or maybe a 6-week time frame versus cancer or something of that nature. Once they are no longer able to get those prescription drugs, they seek other alternatives. Now, opioids are very are strong in nature, and they work very well. But someone who's taking opioids would not go to um, typically would not revert to Tylenol and Motrin. They may start out with Tylenol and Motrin and then need something stronger, but most people will not go from opioid to Tylenol and Motrin, although it is a good way to wean yourself off. But again, if you do not know about these risks, that is not going to come to mind. And so most people are seeking more medication, but if you cannot get it, then you're looking to fill that void or to go to other substances. And so that's another scenario where I can't get prescription drugs, over the counter drugs I don't want to take. And so then I may try to contact someone illegally and obtain heroin. Absolutely. So that's how that goes. Yeah.
Wow.
They obtain and not a prescription from a doctor, but can they obtain Oxycontin and um, was it Dilan? Did you say Dilantin or something like
I
that?
can't hear you. I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
Can they get Oxycontin and some of those stronger opioids that are technically prescribed by a doctor? Can they get that on the streets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honestly, I just want to share a quick story with you all. So when I was pregnant with my now 5-month-old son, I had someone approach me at the grocery store, and they asked me when I had the baby, could they have my opioids? This time,
Wow.
I didn't even know that was an option, or I couldn't understand why a woman would receive opioids. I've since been educated and I know about C-sections and, the aftermath or recovery with that. But this person asked me to receive opioids if the doctor prescribed it to me once I had the baby. And so to your point, there are, drug dealers or people who sell these drugs on the street. I have learned from research or different seminars that Oxycontin usually goes for about $80 a pill. And
Wow.
people will try to obtain these drugs on the street again, but if they cannot afford it, because it's still expensive. So if you can't get it through the doctor, then you try to get it on the street, but then let's say you can't afford it, then that's when the heroin kicks in because it's a lesser amount of money or it's less, it's inexpensive. And so, but then it's still doing the job. And so that's why people end up getting to that point. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of mind boggling.
It is.
Mhm.
Ooh.
In this case, with the opioid misuse and addiction and the
Mhm.
prescription, some of them are doing Adderall or Vyvanse, the ADHD medicine, which is
Mhm.
not necessarily a painkiller.
Mhm.
Um, is that's still prescription drug misuse,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So what can you say to parents about that with that, because you hear a lot of college students, a lot of high school students using those drugs that are for technically ADD or ADHD, and to help them concentrate, they take these drugs that their doctor did not prescribe for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a big thing. Even when I was in college, people would buy it from other kids, like during final season when it was time to
Mhm.
study for finals,
Mhm.
just so they could do all-nighters and stay focused so they can
Mhm.
cram it out.
Yeah, and again, I don't think parents are, and I really want to drive this home that parents are not, and I some because we can't say all, but I think the main focus is allowing parents to have that conversation
Mhm.
before their kids go to college, because what's happening is, and it's so sad because this information is getting to our kids at a very young age. So honestly, if you're waiting to have that conversation with your kids, when they're going to college, you probably missed a huge gap of information that was then shared by other youth or peers that could have started inside the home. And a lot of times we're scared to have those conversations, and it's really hard because you don't know what to say, and you don't know how, what to expose your child to, or how much to say, or how it's really difficult. So I definitely don't want to take it lightly. But again, elementary, middle school, those are some very key points or time periods to talk to our children about the potential dangers of drugs. And even when I was a substitute teacher for Gwinnett County, there was a couple of lessons in the health class that talked about candy versus drugs. It was very simplified, of course, but again, it was very good that we are talking to children as young as 5 years old about not sharing medication. I mean, even if it's for a headache, you don't want to share medication. You don't know if someone is allergic to it. And so, again, I talked to my daughter who's now 7. She knows what drugs are. She knows that if someone's asking her to have something, that she needs to first come to her mom or her dad and ask if it's okay, even if she's at the skating rink, even if she's at the park. And so these conversations are being started already, and it's never too late, but we do want to have those conversations with our children beforehand. If we wait until their friends talk to them, then they're more privy to information that we probably don't want them to know, or it may come in addition to peer pressure, or actually, trying to convince them to use it, or make them think that it's okay to. So we just want to keep that line of communication open. Again, I know it's difficult. We don't, you have to tread lightly, but it's best to just have that conversation, even if it's not perfect. It's best to have it than to not have it at all. And to your point about the different drugs, I mean, there's such a wide array of different substances and mixtures, and I mean, from soda to, like you said, Adderall. I mean, people have come up with all different kinds of things. They have truly used their creative gifts for something that is not so good. And so unfortunately, we do have to keep an open mind when it comes to this type of abuse.
So, Kimberly, is there an average age when kids start to be introduced to this? Like you found, you were talking about that trifecta in the Metro Atlanta area. What's
Mhm.
the average age that those students are being introduced?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is 11 to 13. I would say that's a pretty safe range. But
Wow.
you have to think about it. There is that exception where it's happening younger than that. It all depends on what the child is exposed to. And we often stay in our bubbles and think that, our kids are safe, or it won't happen to my child, or my child is not around friends like that, or doesn't go to that type of school. But again, like we mentioned earlier, this is a very affluent neighborhood, so we can always assume that people who are using drugs are in the slums of the city. That's not true. It's a different, era, and it doesn't matter what color we are or what our tax bracket is or what our age or anything of that nature. We are all prone to prescription drug abuse. So we definitely want to just stay aware of these types of things. Absolutely.
So what are some warning signs? Like if you had a child or a teenager, um, what are some warning signs that parents might start to notice that their
Mhm.
teens may be addicted to a prescription drug or opioid?
hmm I would say medication missing out of the cabinet or underneath the sink or the drawer. Hopefully, it would be in a lockbox. That's what we encourage, is to keep your medication safe, keep them in a lockbox. But if the medication is missing, that's a sign. If the student is experiencing poor grades and you know your student to be a pretty scholar student, but now their grades are dropping all of a sudden, that's another sign. Alienation from family and friends or both. That could be another sign. Behavior, erratic behavior. Maybe they don't have as much patience or peace or joy as they used to, or maybe they're more snappy. So again, it goes back to there's just different things that we can see that our children may experience. And I would say anything that's abnormal, it's worth checking out. If your child has been one way consistently for many years or even the past 6 months, and all of a sudden there's a behavior change, I think it's worth exploring. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's prescription drug abuse, but as parents, we all know that, living in this world, there's just so many different temptations, so many different negative experiences, unfortunately, that our children can go through. And so I think it's just important that we stay aware of this being a possibility.
Now, I wanted to ask you so if a child is abusing prescription drugs, I would imagine, does that increase your chance to use other substances like underage drinking or tobacco?
Mhm.
Do those things kind of go hand in hand? Like one will kind of make you far more likely for you to partake in others?
Well, and that's a very great question. It could start off even with marijuana, because a lot of youth or just adults in general feel as though marijuana is perfectly okay. It's not a big deal. Better than any other drug. Um,
Mhm.
Things, and I don't want to get too much into that, but I use that substance because people think there's no risk to smoking or using marijuana. But there has been instances where someone has started off with marijuana, told their mom that, oh, mom, it's not a big deal, it's just a little pot. It ended up down that road of using prescription drugs and then being addicted to heroin and eventually, passing away. So it can start off what we consider is small to some people, but it really isn't. So it's a slippery slope. It's definitely a slippery slope, because once you're exposed to that one drug, you may want to try others. And again, going back to trying to relieve that pain, if something is not working or your body has become immune to it, and so it's no longer relieving that pain as much as it did before, you're going to seek other substances or other avenues to take that pain away. And also on the other side, when someone is addicted to opioid or they have opioid use disorder and they're trying to withdraw or heal from that, there are side effects with that. So it's like vomiting, headaches, migraines. And so a lot of times, because you're trying to take your body off what it's used to, then now when you're experiencing those headaches and migraines and nausea and you're starting to vomit, you're going to want to take the medication again because it will take those symptoms away. That's why it's just best to avoid it all.
So you're saying pain, and we're thinking, you broke a bone, you had surgery, people take drugs for migraine headaches.
Mhm.
Do people take the opioids for emotional pain?
Yes, yes, I would imagine so, because again, it will mask feelings. Now, I'm not going to say that it will fix it or it's the solution. I don't agree with that. I don't think, because I'm going through a divorce that I need to take opioids. But again, there are a lot of people who are experiencing, mental challenges or just, with everything going on. And so they are seeking those unhealthy substances, whether it be alcohol or tobacco or drugs. Now, we know that's not the solution again, but people will seek those substances to try to mask the pain that they're going through. Absolutely.
Well, our time is almost up. Can you tell us a little bit about what God does in Gwinnett County and DeKalb County and the surrounding areas to help
Right.
reduce the opioid misuse and prescription drug abuse?
Yes, absolutely. So just to reiterate, GUIDE stands for Gwinnett United in Drug Education. It's a nonprofit organization that focuses on positive youth development and also prevention. And a lot of different buckets that we focus on is preventing suicide, tobacco, alcohol, prescription drug, and opioid abuse. And so those are those two main focuses that we focus on. Like I said, positive youth development and prevention. We're doing a lot of work, not only in DeKalb and Gwinnett, but also in Newton and Rockdale. We're going to expand our services, and also some things that we do are statewide. And a lot of times we're in the schools trying to talk to these young people, the youth, about prescription drug. Particularly, I'll speak from my standpoint about prescription drug and opioid medication. And just before COVID happened, I was scheduled to go inside a couple of schools and do a couple of presentations to educate the youth, because again, awareness and education is the first step. Knowing what to do, how to handle things. When you know better, we want to do better. And so that is a main key of what GUIDE does, is education. We also do a lot of training and facilitation. We have youth action teams that are in several schools throughout the state of Georgia who are focusing on targeting youth, but it's by youth. So easier, we all know it's easier to listen to a peer or friend rather than an adult. And so we have these groups or teams inside the school that are supporting prevention, who are against alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. They can then encourage their peers to do the same and lead by example. And so those are a couple of things that GUIDE does.
Okay, I think I said one more question, but I got one more.
Oh, sure.
Who should a parent contact if they think their child or teenager is using prescription drugs or opioids?
Well, is in relation to GUIDE, I would suggest Michael Davis, and his email is michael@guideinc.org. Again, that's Michael Davis at guideinc. Michael Davis. His email is michael@guideinc.org. But there's so many different other resources. NIDA, there's the suicide hotline through DBHDD. And I'm sorry, I can't think of an exact number, so we may have to look that up and then put that back in. But definitely we focus more on prevention. But when you start thinking about treatment and other things, like someone's actually already addicted, then of course you will want them to go to a treatment service. But prevention is sort of the front line. Let's stop this before it even starts. And then you have treatment, those who are already involved in the abuse. And then you have recovery, those people who are trying to get away from it or heal or, move forward from that. So we may have to link, I'll have to look that up. I'm sorry, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Again, we focus more so on prevention.
Okay, that's fine. We can put that in the comments.
Okay, thank you.
Because I know sometimes people just don't know where to turn.
Yeah. And then of course you always have church and other community organizations that's willing to support a family member or just a member or friend if they're going through that. And I always say, like, it's just important to ask. I mean, because if I don't know the answer, but I know there's a struggle or need, I'm going to find that answer for you. So I may not be able to help you directly, but I can find someone who will be able to help you.
Absolutely. That was good.
Well, Well, Kimberly, thank you so much. This was awesome, and we are really appreciate you being with us today and all this great information that you provided for us. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Did you enjoy that episode? Well, it's not over yet. We want to keep this discussion going. Hop over to the Cherish Stories Revolution Facebook group and leave a comment now. If this content is engaging, helpful, and empowering, please subscribe and share with your friends. Let's be real, parenting teens can be hard, but you are who God chose to guide her to adulthood. Keep going, Mom. You have everything she needs. God's equipped you for this, and we're here to help supplement. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.